Recording.
Yeah, I just started. Thank you. So yeah, we have this, just for the recording, we have this My Cats page, which is grabbing all the cats that we like, have hit the like button on. If we go to the routes file, we have a get request to My Cats, and that takes us to the My Cats controller, the cats controller to the My Cats method. So in the My Cats method, in the cats controller, we have one method defined here that is using a custom method that we created called like cats. Now, this is partly why I got a little confused yesterday. So this method works, user.LikeClass, because this is a method on the class. This is a method on the user class. And this method we defined right here as a class method by using this self keyword. So the self right here refers to class, to the user class. And so I'm making a class method called like cats, and just does a little SQL to, or a little like Rails mixed with SQL to grab all the cats where the IDs match. And the IDs we're passing here is an attribute we pass, if I go, is an attribute we added to our user model called liked cats. So if I look at my schema, we have a, right down here, we have a like cats column in our database, in our table. And this is of type text. So this is going to get stored as text to our database. But in our user model, we're going to serialize that text into an array. So now we can use that like cats attribute like we could, in an array. So that's why I can do something like this in my cats controller. I pass it the current user.LikeCats, and then in my user model where I called that, I can treat that like it's a list, and can call like an array method .empty. Now, I think, yeah, so this works because this method name like cats, this is a name of the method. So I'm kind of overloading this term liked cats. So I can have a liked cats attribute on the user. That's the method I just defined. And then I can have this like cats call attribute on my current user. That's the text. Does that make sense here? I have two different user.LikeCats. That is, our custom method defined in user model. And then we have current user.LikeCats. And that is a text attribute, you know, of a user. And, you know, this is serialized to array here. So what I did yesterday was I wanted to show you how we could do this with an instance method on current user. And then all of a sudden, well, what I did was I called it liked cats, because I kind of just copied and pasted it and just switched this to current user. And then I came into, you know, my user model and made a instance method called like cats. So now on my current user, I'm now defining like a method like user. So I could call this as like current user dot liked cats. But now that was a no-no, because what I did was now here I'm overloading, like I'm defining that name twice on a instance of a user class. So then when it got to line 40, and you know, I'm not sure why it chose this one over the array, but when it called self.LikeCats, it thought I was referring to the method that I had just defined here. So self is the instance calling this method. So I first call it my cats controller, current user dot like cats. That comes here, calls this method. And so self, in this case, you could really think of self when current user just called it is really like calling current user dot like cats. But then now that have duplicated this name, what's going on is it's going to then call this method. And then we got stuck in a recursion. So if you're calling a function and over, it's not going to go on forever. It's not going to go on. I mean, that's what you would think, you know, this goes on forever. But what actually happens is you put all these function calls on the stack, because they're not actually finishing. They're just keep on calling itself. And then you get that stack overflow error. Or we saw, I think in Ruby, it was like stack is too deep. So we essentially used up all of our memory for this program, and it just crashed. And that's going to happen if you do something like this. You're going to get a stack overflow error. Cool. And that was also breaking there was something else it was breaking. I think it was like in this method, you know, where I had to like then access it like this. Like if I accessed it like that, then it worked. And that was like really confusing. I was like, why is that working? Well, then that was just actually grabbing the array. So, but yeah, the fix for this I think is obviously not to call this method like cats, because I already have that on the user. So we can just comment that out. So I just switched that to get liked cats. And then in my cats controller, now I can call that. So now I defined a instance method called getLikeCats that I can call on a instance of the class, which in this case, I'm going to use the current user, the logged in user, to call that method. Then in my user, when I call this, I have self in this method. And let's just, I think this can be, I know I kind of struggled when I first learned about like the self and this keyword. So it's just the instance calling the method. So let's go ahead. We're going to put self right here in this method. I'm going to go to my page. I'm going to log out. I'm going to register as, I don't know, selfdemo.test.com. That's the email. And register. Cool. So I can go to my cats. That's good. This user just registered. It shouldn't have any liked cats because it hasn't liked any. I could go to home and like one cat. Go to my cats. Now that user has one liked cat.
If you refresh the page right now, will it log you out with this info? Okay, so it's storing.
Yeah. And yeah, it should not log you out. I mean, let me try this. Let me close out of Chrome. Like just quit Chrome. Open it back up. So I quit Chrome. I'm going to go localhost 3000. I'm logged in. So that should be the other thing. You know, it should be able to work if you know even if I quit Chrome and I go back to this page, I'm logged in. And as that user I just created. So where's my email? selfdemo.test. So if I go to the My Cats page, remember this is now calling that instance method. So if I look at, there's my self log, and then I'm logging, I'm just putting out self. See, self is the user, that logged in user that called that method. So there's the email, the selfdemo@test.com. You know, if I log out and register as like a test one, let's go like a cat or two. That has two cats. See now self in that time is now that user that I'm logged in as test one. Does the distinction between instance methods and class methods make sense? Cool. And then there's also, so there's instance methods, class methods, and then there's our attributes on our models as well. So like the data that, you know, we could look at, you know, from our table in our schema. So my user has, you know, it has these custom methods like get cats, get like cats or get unlike cats, which are methods on it. So we have some class methods, we have some instance methods, but then we have some just our data on an instance of a user. So each user is going to have all of these fields. And when you're in a method in your model, you can grab the instance calling that method with this self keyword. And in JavaScript, it's the this keyword. So self and this are like the same thing. They're just Ruby decided to call it self and JavaScript decided to call it this. They're going to behave a little differently. It's not like they behave the same, but it's the same idea. Sweet. But yeah, I mean, obviously you saw that really throw me off yesterday because I was really not expecting that. Like I totally was just forgot that I had that, I had an extra that like cats on there. So it took me a second to find that one. Cool. Let's do this. I think another thing, and just kind of with device token auth. Let's say we want to add like a new column to our user model. This is probably something you might want to do. Because if I look at my schema, I have like a name, a nickname. I have a lot of fields on here, but maybe I want to add my own. Like, and we did that with liked cats. So, and it worked. But let's say we wanted to add a field on like register. Maybe we want a field like they have nickname. Let's just say we want username on there. I want a username column on my, and then I want to put this on like my register. They have to give me a username. So let's go generate a migration for this. Rails G migration. Add username to users. So that's the name of the file to users. And then I'm going to say username. That should be a string, yeah. Rails G migration. A little bigger. Cool. So let's look at that migration file. So that actually added the code to do this migration. And that's really because like I was really specific with how I named everything here. If I said like, and this is, I'm going to delete this migration, but if I said like add, let's just say like zip to user, and we'll do like zip, sure it can be a string. Let's see if this automatically does it. That's smart enough to do it. I do like add zip to, user with a Z. See, that's just going to add column U to the users table with a Z. That's obviously not going to work because we don't have a users table. So I can delete that one. So just delete that migration. If I don't give it like the data after, then on the migration, it's just going to give me this stubbed out migration with nothing in there. And I can manually come in here and be like, oh, add, column. Oh, yeah, add column. And I can come in here and I can kind of just throw whatever I want inside of here. I want to add column users. It's going to be zip. I really forget the order of all these damn semicolons. Okay. Zip. These are all symbols. Zip. And then the type. And I could throw in more here, but it's a little demo with the migrations. So I'm gonna delete these though. And I'm going to delete this zip one as well. These ones, you can just delete the file because it's just a file that when you run a migration, it just creates a file. You could also create a migration in here manually. The nice thing about doing the Rails G migration and why I would recommend doing this is it gives you the timestamp. But if you're deleting them, you can just remove them to trash. So I don't want that one anymore. I don't want this one anymore. So now we just have this one migration. We're just adding username to our users column. So let's do a Rails DB migrate. And I can step into my console, Rails console. Let's do a user dot, just to see if this is working, user.create. We do need to give it an email and a valid email that's unique. So I think test2 test.com. Password needs to be at least 6 characters. Let's give it a username. And there we go. So I'm creating a user. I just kind of want to show you this. So u equals user dot last and u dot username. Like it worked, right? We have our username column in our database. And I successfully created a user with a username, and I'm able to get that. So that is in my database. So yeah, let's say we want to do this, though. Obviously, we don't want to do this in the console. We want to do this in our UI. error occurred. So I'm getting an error occurred because my server's not running. I need to log out. So let's say on our register form, I want to now add this username column. Because maybe I want, if someone registers, they have to have a username. That's maybe just a requirement that we have. So let's go do that. So let's go to that register form. Let's kind of do what we normally would do, create some state for that. It's kind of hard code a value in there. All right. So then I'm just going to come in here, create another input for this. Username. Just switch that to user to my state username and set username. Okay, so I've just added this extra column, and if I go to my form, now I have the username there, just hard coded it to username 1. I'm just gonna have it match the email. So if this is test3@test.com, I'll have it be username 3. This doesn't, I didn't do any validation for this. It's not like this has to be unique, but I'm gonna go ahead and register. So I'm registered, that successfully registered. But if you look at my username attribute right here, it's null. So I can kind of see a little what's going on here. It's a little hard to see this one, but if I look at my registration, it's actually sanitizing out that username attribute. It's just only allowing email and password. So, we're kind of, at this point, it's like, oh, what do we do? Because, we're still able to successfully create a user, but it's not allowing us to, send up this username because it's sanitizing that field out. But if you remember, like we never did anything with a user controller. Like we never wrote that sanitizer. Like that's not, we don't even have a user's controller. So, when, using a library like device token auth is very nice because it does a lot of things for us. It's handling so much of this stuff, of course, behind the scenes. But then we get into an issue like this, where, we want to do something very reasonable, add a column to our registration, and it's not allowing us to do this. So I really thought I would have seen an unpermitted parameter to your username, but I think it's just letting us know there's one inside of there that's not permitted. Password yet. I can see it's not coming through here. So it's getting filtered out. I could also just check, one other place I might want to check is, because this actually might be in our, also, yeah, actually, here it is. I did not actually pass this to my handle register function. So I probably should have checked that first, that I was actually sending the username. And I actually wasn't, because I didn't have that in my handle register function. So I need to put the username there. So it actually sends that with my API call. Because remember, this first object here in my handle register, let's just go to our auth provider. That is what I'm sending as my data to this Axios call. So let's try that again. So maybe that was the error. That could have been it. So let's do a test for username for register. Logged in, username is still null. And actually this one, okay, so if we see the parameters, there is, okay, so we do see the username parameters. Okay, and here we go. I was kind of looking for this specific error because now it's telling us we have a unpermitted parameter username. So now I really know it's on the back end. Because I can now see that username parameter being sent. And when I look at my user, it's not being set. Cool. So yeah, and I kind of tricked myself a little just because I know we can't do this. I knew this wasn't going to work, but that, so now that we actually have this working, or kind of working, we need to figure out what to do about this. Now, for a lot of like a specific issue like this, we can just go over it together as a class, or like I could throw it in notes like, oh, here's how you fix this. But a lot of the times, once you're using these third-party libraries, you're really kind of going to be on your own. It's not like you can go back to Neo and maybe find the section that deals with, the problem you're having. So this is where, and as a developer, and as you start to like grow in your developer career and as a software engineer, it really is kind of the skill of getting good at Google and reading people's documentation. Because if you're kind of getting this kind of error, and it's not really an error, I think this is how this library is designed to work. We need to go now look at the documentation in that library, or at least Google like trying to add extra field device. So Auth not working. So yeah, and then we would want to maybe go find a Stack Overflow for that. And if we can find one, this one's 2015, this one's 2019. Maybe look at that one. I've obviously have viewed this one before. The other, so I could get a Stack Overflow. The other thing might be nice is do device. So actually go to the library itself and see if you can find their documentation. So here, like they have, this is their README. A lot of these bigger repositories or bigger third-party libraries will have their own like websites, their own docs. So I could go in, try to find in their documentation, like how, things to do. Almost add attribute, add column. That's new fields. I want to add a new param for sign up and account update. All right, so now we're kind of getting somewhere. Override the controller because we don't have access to the controller here. So we're gonna, hopefully they give us a way to do this. So I go through their docs. I can kind of see maybe this looks like a solution. Like a, configure, just configure param, create a before action, create a method, add it as a sanitizer. I could also go, if this is a little unclear, going to the, like a Stack Overflow where you might see some answers. We can kind of see that same idea where we do it before action. They're saying do it in the application controller. And we can configure, we can just kind of create this custom method. So let's see if we can get this to work. I'm just going to, from this documentation, I'm just going to take this. Doesn't let me copy this.
That looks like it's in, what is the on line 4 in that code, the protected mean?
Remember how we have a the private keyword?
Yeah.
And underneath the private, like, and I'll just show you this. So just to review that, I could have a private keyword here.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so yeah, this like is visible to class or to this, like to file. And so yeah, I can now call this method here, but that's the only place I can call this method. Like I can't call it, I can never call visible to file outside of this file. Protected is very similar. So we can have like the protected keyword. It's the very similar to the private. So this is visible to file. And I mean, let's just really make this a silly name. Visible to file and, any class that extends this model. So if I made some class down here, like X, and I have this extend my user model, I can call this method in here. That works. This would not work. That doesn't work. Because in my this is my user model. I have a protected method visible to file and any class that extends this model method. And then I have a private section where I have one method called visible to file. So I come create another class X, I just inherit from user. So this one's going to be able to view this, call this method, but that one it's not going to be able to.
Real quick, just because I'm curious, would you have to do it in that order where it's protected above private? If you put private above protected, would that kind of throw it off? Because it would hit the private first.
I I'm not 100% sure. I always write the protected methods first. I think the answer would be no. I don't think the order matters because it's I think Ruby's going to be smart enough to know, okay, this is the private section, everything inside of here until it hits this protected keyword, and then it's going to know everything is under there is protected. So I don't know 100% off the top of my head, but I would be like 95% sure that it doesn't matter. Because just looking at it myself, I can tell, where the private starts and where the protected starts. So I think Ruby should be easily, be able to do that too. And I think this kind of illustrates why we want to make this a protected method. I'm not going to do this in a registration controller. I'm just going to do this in my application controller. And just kind of looking at this stack because I don't have a registration controller. And I think this is just kind of like a generic thing they're giving us here. And looking at this Stack Overflow, they're telling me to add it to the application controller. So let's go to the application controller. Cool. So yeah, now I have this protected method, configure permitted parameters. So we're going to do before action. So this is, we're going to do this on since I'm doing this in the application controller and making this a protected method. I think what's going on here, it's hard to say, is that the registration controller is probably going to extend from this application controller and then have access to this method. And then it can call it. Or I can just call it, like what I'm doing right here is I can just call it right here. So before any action, let's just configure this. And we're only going to do this on sign up and update. So for this, I want to add username and then username. So let's look at this %i as well, because this is a little weird syntax. So what is this %i doing? I'm going to go to IRB. Do %. I don't even need to throw that in this string because they just had name. Let me just show you what this is doing. So if I do a %i, %i, and then username. That is just creating in an array of symbols. So this is the %i is just a fancy way to create in an array really quickly. So this is really just an array. And I'm going to write it like that because I think that's little more clear. But you can do this %i can just be it's a Ruby help. Ruby has all this syntactic sugar. It's like, oh, now we don't have to add commas and parentheses and the colons. Yeah, if I look at like this Stack Overflow, see they're doing something. You know, they have. We'll see if we have to do this added attributes, username, email, password confirmation, because they are adding a username, but they're adding all of these other ones that should already be sanitized or be allowed through, and then they just store that as a variable. They also have this if. That might be, I kind of like this if statement. I don't know why the other one doesn't have it. Sometimes Stack Overflow's documentation are better than the documentation on the docs. So this one's saying, hey, run this action only if it's a device controller. I think that makes sense. We only want to do this sanitizer if we're doing a device controller method. Cool. So let's see if this works. I don't think I have to restart my server for this, but I'm just going to save. So let's go to log out. I'm going to log in or register. User 5, username 5, register. And there we go. So now we have a username column, and we actually are able to send that up with the registration. It looks like another thing we added for here. So we've added it on sign up, and it looks like we've added the sanitizer so we can also update our username on update. If we didn't want to be able to update our username on update, we could just get rid of that. But I'll just leave that there. So yeah, especially towards the last part of this cohort, like when you're working on your final portfolio project, you know, this really wasn't so much about, I mean, it was about how do we add a extra column to device token auth. But, you know, I think more importantly, it's going to be about like, how do you figure out how to do that? And it's using the resources online. So either the documentation from the library you're using, or like a Stack Overflow to help, you know, figure out how to do the things you want to do. Because these libraries are pretty, you know, customizable. You know, it's just trying to figure out how to do that can sometimes be a pain. Let's try this, and we can like even like maybe go experiment with this a little. I'm just gonna make this puts easy to find. It's another way kind of like learn about this. So one thing we did, we have this like if device controller. Let's just see if we can see this puts message. So I go to back to my React app, I log out, register. Let's do a 6. See how much time pre-populating these register fields or saving. I only have to go in and change like a couple things. I don't have to go type out an email and password every time. Just have to maybe go change a couple things if I'm registering so I have a unique email. Register is called. See, there's that before action being called. If I go to like my cats, oh, undefined method visible to file. Looks like I did not comment that out. Get rid of that. Let's try that again. That's working. But yeah, it's not calling that before action. Which is good. So if I go back to my application controller, let's get rid of that. I'm kind of seeing, do I really need that if device controller? Let's see if that's actually doing anything. It's on the server. Like I said, I don't think I need to do that. I'm just being safe. Go to my cats. Go home, my cats. Yeah, now I'm getting this error. Undefined local variable or method resource name, cats controller, resource class. That's like what? But that's in my configure configure permitted parameters in my application 13. So I'm trying to do a get request to API/cats. I'm logging this configure permitted params. I'm getting a 500 error. You know, undefined method resource name, like what the heck is that? And that's coming from this method. So if I go, I mean, this one could, you know, really cause some issues. Because what I'm doing is I'm calling this before action before I'm doing it. So I'm going, I actually do need that if device controller. Now, if I go to my cats, I no longer do this function. So yeah. I don't know, maybe if we did it this way, we might have to make a registration controller. So, like I said, sometimes Stack Overflows can be better than the documentation. So we found a way that works. That's good. We can maybe go get that other way, try to work it, make it work that other way. But I think, you know, as long as it's working, it's looking good. Cool. Let's take a little break here. I'll push this up to GitHub. Any questions on this? Let's come back at, let's call it 11:45. Fix my computer right now. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, is there, that was definitely one thing I wanted to, the two things I wanted to go over today were really that error differences between like just iterating, going over class methods and instance methods, and adding extra attributes and devise token auth. Is there anything in particular you would like to ask or you would like to go over with this week? So this week, we talked about, I would say there's a couple main concepts there. Hooks, we kind of did a deeper dive into hooks. Some of React hooks, use effect, use state. We even did a little with use reducer. We created some custom hooks. So we saw how to create some custom hooks. And then we moved into providers and the API React context API, where we're able to create a provider that can provide data and functions to our whole app. And then we saw with the use context hook, we can easily grab that data and those functions. We can have this nice global state. And then we kind of use this idea of a provider and having this global state to go attack kind of like an unrelated problem, but like a problem that really benefits from having that shared state, which is authentication. And we did, a whole React front end with authentication, doing some routes that, making sure we're logged in before we show that route. And then on the back end, we're able to verify, that a user sending us the right token before we give them back the data. So a lot of stuff this week. So
I feel like I would like to maybe see some of the API context stuff again.
Like kind of like more like the provider type stuff. Provider.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what day we did it on.
Is it the one where we like had the account, where we had like a user account type thing going on?
Yeah.
Cool.
The React context API day.
Cool. Yeah, we can definitely, go add another provider. Do that. Anything else? Cool. Let's just go in and create, just for demo, just go into our project and create another provider. Just to go through those steps again. And let me share my screen as I'm recording, I believe. So we'll just keep doing this in our, so we don't have to reset up anything. We'll do like our cat Tinder app. Let's do this. Let's say, just trying to think of like an example of where we could throw this. And how much more messages. So where am I actually doing this? Let's go into my home.js. So I'm going to do let's kind of do this as we maybe would do it with like a provider. So we have like this cat's data. And This is definitely going to be like an overkill for a provider use case, but we can do it regardless. So I'm going to leave this home page here. And I'm going to add a new page called, let's just call it cats.js. And this is just going to be a simple component for now. Export default cats. So in our home.js, we're maintaining the state of our cats here, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. Since we're learning about providers and context, it's not saying we always have to use it. I would say where we really want to use this is if we're sharing state, the state among multiple components. So we can do this, we can have our state within a specific component, but just for demo, let's say we want to create another provider, that manages cat state. So let's just first render this. So I'm going to go to my app.js. This one's probably going to need to be protected, right? Because cats are kind of, we're probably going to want to have a logged in user for this. So I'm going to throw this in this root element that's wrapped with this require auth. Let's just review really quickly this component. So this require auth component has a use effect. So when this mounts, we're going to check auth status. We just really want to just take a second and see if we're authenticated or not. So we're first going to check, hey, do we have a user? Like, is this authenticated variable true? If it's true, we know we're authenticated, so we can stop. Or if we go in and look in local storage and we see that we don't, so I'm using a not, if we don't have a access token, then we know we're not authenticated. So it's a weird if statement because it's like either we're authenticated or we're not. But that way we know we're not. So we can set checking auth status to false because we're done checking because we know we've checked our status. If we get past this if statement, what we know we have is we're not authenticated, but we have a token in local storage. So we need to check to see if that token's valid. Because this is where like maybe your computer's been off for like a day. And maybe if you're doing a banking app, you invalidate your token after like 15 minutes. But what we can do here, so we can do this check. Well, there is a token in local storage. Let's go see if that's still valid. So we do a check, we do an Axios call. If our token is still valid, we'll get back the user data. So we can set our user to that data. If it's not a valid token, it will throw an error. So that was unable to validate token. But whether or not it's valid, we've checked the database, so we can set this checking auth status to false. So when this component renders, we're first going to say, hey, if we're checking auth status, we can just have a little message. We're checking if logged in or not. If we're not authenticated, then we're going to redirect them to like a login screen. If we are authenticated and we have a valid token, then let's do the outlet component. And the outlet component is just going to be whichever route we're matching. It's going to be whichever is inside of here. So for this cats component we're creating, I think I want this to be protected. And so we'll have a logged in user. And let's just go add this to our layout. So I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to call this cats. Cats. There we go. Something I want to do really quickly, just because it's starting to drive me crazy, is there's no margin or no in between our links. I'm just going to do this with CSS. So looks like if I have, I don't want to do it to all my links, but maybe if I have a link inside of a div, I'm going to style those. So I want to do a nested A tag in a div tag. So that's what I'm going to style. I'm just going to go to my index.js. So div A. So any A tag within a div, I'm just going to do margin left. Let's do margin right. 20 pixels. I just want some space. That's just driving me a little crazy. Cool. Another way I could have done that to make that a little more specific and just really being like kind of lazy. I could wrap this whole navbar in and give it a class like navbar. What does it look like? Oh, I need to change that back to a fragment. Now I have a navbar class. So now I could do this. This is just going to make it really specific. .navbar div A. So now this is only going to apply margin right 20 pixels to a element that has that's nested in a navbar class, and then that needs to have a div nested inside of that. So it's a way I can just get really specific with that styling. So CSS side note. Okay. So I have this cats component, and what I want to do is I'm just going to create a provider just so we can review providers. I'm going to come in here and create a new file, cat provider. This is just going to provide cat data. So you can think of a provider like in the API, the context API as giving you a consumer, or we're also going to use the context to as a way to get the data, and then it's going to give us a provider. So this is essentially a way to get data, and a provider is a way to, provide data. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to make a cat context. And this is going to be React dot create context. So the create context gives us a consumer and a provider. I need to import React right here. And then I'm going to do a export const cat consumer. Cat.context.consumer. Now, we don't need this if we use context hook, but we would need this for like a class component. So I have there's my context. I can create a consumer with that context. I can now now I can come create a provider. So I'm going to call this cat provider. This is just going to be my React component. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my context, but I'm going to grab that provider on there. Let's get this props because we need, and then we're just going to render down here props.children. So the value here, I just give it an object. Let's say x is 1, y is 2 for now. And I can export default my cat provider. So I have this cat provider that's going to wrap, my app in the index.js. So that's where I'm going to use this provider. Sorry, so let's go to the index.js. I think I want my auth provider to be, since my cat provider needs to be logged in, I'm going to have my cat provider logged in here, wrapped in my auth provider. So let's try doing this. Actually, not even 100% sure if this is going to work, but let's try it out. Let's do a use context. I think it should. I don't see why it wouldn't, but inside of here, let's just do a use effect. Let's do this on mount. console.log melted. Okay. So let's grab our user. Let's say let user. Let's grab this auth. Let's just grab something like the email. Email from our use context hook auth context. So I have this cat provider. It has a use effect. It's just going to log this email that I'm getting from my auth context using the context. But I just kind of want to test this and see if this works. So use effect is not defined. So import use effect from React. There's that. So console. Cool. So user email right now is undefined. That's fine because we're not logged in. I need to click login. Error occurred logging in user. My server stop. If you see this proxy error could not proxy, that's probably you forgot to start your server, your Rails server, which I did. You're getting that proxy error. Make sure your Rails server is running. Need to refresh. No, let's log in. I'm logged in. I'm gonna hit refresh. I don't think that's grabbing that fast enough. Oh. Yeah, this brings up a whole nother issue. So I'm going to skip this example for now, not grabbing the user. This might be an issue. But let me just go back to the provider example and then we'll get back to this use effect. So I have a cat context provider where I'm just going to render props.children. And then in my index.js, see, I'm wrapping my browser router and my app in that component. Cool. So let's say in my, just to demo this, in this cat component now, I can now go ahead and do the const. Remember how we had the X and Y values in that value? I can set that equal to use. I'm going to grab that use context hook from React. I'm going to provide that the cat context. Then we have X and Y. Use context not defined. I need to import this from React. Cats There we go. There's X1 and Y is 2. And there's no reason, like these names aren't anything special. I could go to my home component. You know, the nice thing about the providers, I can grab that data anywhere. So I can grab X and Y from my cat context in my home component. Just right here. X is X. Y is Y. So now my home component, I can grab those values. So any component I want, I can grab that state. So I can look at my components. I have my auth provider. That's providing my user data. So things like the email, the UID, the like cats array. I have my cat provider. What's the state for that? Oh, it's because it's a functional component and I don't have it as a hook. This might be, let me just go to my cats provide. Just gonna try something here. This might be better to write these. I wonder if these are better written as functional components. Or if it just, or if I have to put that into a state, this might be more of this a Chrome extension thing. I just want to see if it's nice in that tool to be able to see these values. Props is not defined. So if this is a class component, now it's this dot props. It's not in there. It's going to make me, if I think I did it, if I did it as state. Yeah. Then I can see those values. It's more I have to have those at state. I don't think it's a functional component thing. So I'm going to make this back to a functional component, just the way we had it. So if I really wanted to see that, I could say like const data set data. And this is normally how you would, the value, the data you're probably passing to your context is probably going to be in a state object. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Data. So I just threw that random data into a data state object. And state's not defined. So now if I inspect this in React, the component browser, now I have that because it's a use state hook. This is, so as I said, we haven't talked about Redux. We've kind of learned some of the basic concepts of Redux with the use reducer and with providers. The thing that's really nice that I like about Redux is you have one, think of Redux as you have one provider. You have just one global Redux store. And that's providing all the data to your app, and you can use the use reducers functions to update that data, that state. The context API, I think, is a lot. It's way simpler than Redux, so that gives it an advantage. Redux can definitely be overkill for a lot of applications that aren't too complicated, but I think Redux really comes in handy. So I'm spending a lot of time just trying to see this state. As your apps get more and more large and complicated, tools such as like this component browser becomes, really important, because it just gives you a way to debug. And one of the really nice things about Redux that is still, I haven't really, and I would say this is a downside to the provider and the context API doing it that way. It's a little hard to see your state. It's not as easy as Redux, but once again, it's not horrible. But anyway, so I have an auth provider, and then I can do like a cat provider that can provide different data. There's no reason why you couldn't try to throw all of your data in one provider, but that might get a little confusing. So normally with providers, you're going to have them kind of be related to a specific function, like a user provider or like a theme provider. I could potentially throw my cat information in my users, but let's just keep going with this example. So I have this cat provider. It has some simple state in it right now, just X and Y. And I can pass that down into this value. But let's say I also want to pass this function down to set the data. Well, what I can do is, well, now I still want to pass the X and Y information. So I'm going to spread out over my data into a new object. This is actually just essentially the same thing as that. I'm just going to create a clone of it right here, because now I can throw some other stuff in here. And I'm going to throw this set data function in here. So I have my cat provider that has this X and Y data, but then also has a way to set that. So now my cats.js, I can now pull off that set data. I think I called it set data. Let's do a on click. Here we're going to set, we can call that set data function. Change this to X2, Y5. Or we could do something like this, so we can see it change, math.random. So now I have some X and Y data, but then I have a way to set that. So I can click this change, and that changes the state in my cats controller, right, in my cats component. But the nice thing is, since this provider is wrapping my whole app, when I go to my home page, that also has that updated state. Change that again. Now that's 89. Go back to my home component. That's changed there as well. And I didn't have to do anything in my home.js. It's just you because it's using that context that I'm calling cat context. So I think now these names are kind of bad because I have like this. I have this cat provider that has nothing right now to do with cats. So hopefully maybe this is showing, where the names don't matter as far as this actually working. I'm just making up these names. I call this cat context. I call this cat consumer. And I call this cat provider. In my index.js, I wrap, my browser router and my app with this cat provider. Then my cats.js, I can grab the data x and y and this function set data from using the use context with that cat context. And in this cat provider, I can add more functionality. I can like const random data. Maybe I want that function that I just did to live here. Set data x math.random and y math.random. Now I can pass this function here. Let's do a little quiz here. I'm going to do y rand data. Just kind of, actually, first of all, do I want to, this is bad, right? If I call this y. Why is this bad if I call this y?
You already have a Y in your data.
Yeah, because when I do this dash data, essentially what that's doing is it's taking this data, which is an object. So it's just going to take these values and it's going to throw them right there. This would actually, it's not going to break anything, but it's just going to override that first value of y. So that's going to be gone. So I'm no longer going to have, y is not going to be a number, it's going to be a function. So I don't want to break anything, but it probably would break stuff down the line because I might be expecting y to be a number, but now it's a function. So let's call this z. Let's go back and spread out over our data again. Just kind of doing some bad names just so we can kind of see what's going on here. So now my provider has this value, which is just an object where I'm just cloning over what's ever in data. I have a set data function. The key is set data. The value is this set data function from this use state hook. And then I have the z key, which is my random data function. So if I want to do this random data function, like in my cats, I need to pull off that z key because that's the key whose value is that function. And I could do another click where I just call z. Go back to cats. Getting an error. All right, maximum update depth exceeded. That's telling me so that's once again that maximum update depth exceeded. This is essentially the Stack Overflow error. React is catching this before we get into that. So React's like limiting the number of nested updates to prevent infinite loops. So I know, but I do know I have like an infinite loop going on. That's because right here I'm calling the function. I don't actually need to call this here because it doesn't take any arguments. This one I did need to call because I need to pass it an argument, and then I can just wrap that in an anonymous function. But this Z one, I don't need to do anything with. So that changed it, but it looks like it changed it to nothing. Let me just refresh. Click change. Looks like I got another error. Let's go back to my cats provider. What am I doing wrong here? I'm not actually calling those functions. So I need to call those functions here to grab that value. Go to change. Once again, those values are updated. Questions on this? Have any of you tried just, I think one of, it's good to maybe come in and name stuff poorly. I think this can be a good way to kind of get an understanding of this. Now, obviously, I would not want to call this Z. I would probably want to call this like whatever the function name is. And if these key and value match, I don't need them. But by giving these things some, bad names, it can really stretch your thinking and really force you to understand what's going on. Does this, as far as like the provider and the use context, I mean, this is essentially it as like a simple example where, let me get rid of this context for now. So we create some context and we're going to export this because this is what we're going to throw into our use context hook is this variable right here. We can also create a consumer. We don't really need this if we're not doing class components. We briefly talked about how to use this, but this is probably the preferred way to do it. And then we create a provider, and our provider can just have data and it can have functions that then when we create this component, we use that provider component off of our context, give it a value prop, which is just that data and any functions we want to share. So that's our provider. And then anywhere we can use that context. So we're using the cat context to pull off those values from that value prop from that particular provider. But let's go look at maybe a little more like nuanced case of this. So what I was doing here, well, and then before I move on, any questions on that? Because that's where I'm going next is a little more like in depth. But any questions on like the basics of providers and context? And I'm also going to do this. I'm going to create one more key on here, email from cat provider. It's a really obnoxious name, email. So I'm pulling off the email from my context. Like, I'm not sure if I should do this. So I'm trying to pull on a provider. I'm trying to grab some context. Let's just see if we can get this to work. That is in a paragraph. Auth context is not defined. Let's go to my cat provider, or let's uncomment that one out so it's provided. So I'm really not able to grab the email in my use effect. This log is coming from my cat provider when it's mounted, and I'm trying to log the user email. I'm not able to grab that, but I am able to provide it. Because this will update. Once this updates, I'm able to, use that and send it. This is probably not the way you'd want to do it, but so I just wanted to show this, but when I do mount this component, those are the logs. I'm trying to grab the email from my auth context. Remember, this has to do like, we have to be signed in for that to happen. Let's see if I refresh if that will be there. Yeah, even if I log out, log in, it's there. But I can't ever log the email in that component did mount because it's not going to be defined when this component mounts because it's doing an Axios call. So the cat provider, this one's a little weird. Trying to think about what we could do. So I could come in here and maybe run a function. Let's just do an async call here. I'm going to. What I really want to do is like run this use effect when the email changes, but I don't think that's not going to work. This is probably going to break. That actually, oh my gosh, that works. All right. That's interesting. I'm going to say this. I'm kind of winging this. So maybe not the best way to do this, but it works. So interesting enough, this email, if I throw this in here as into my dependency array in my use effect, this will now force my use effect to run if this email updates. Which is good because really what I want is the ID. Or I just want to see, I just kind of actually email's fine. I just want to make sure I'm logged in. So it's just got like authenticated. I can actually just leave it as email. If I have an email, I know I'm logged in. Okay. So I can do something like this in my use effect in my cat provider. And say like if email. If I have an email, I'm logged in. Else. Logged in. Or I could also say like auth. So when I refresh this cats page, I'm not auth right at the start, but once my email updates and I have that, then I am auth. Because what I want to do if I'm auth, let's just do a right here, get cats. Let response equal await axios.get. I think we have an API cats call, right? And then I could come in here, I could create some cat state. Let this be an empty array by default. Set cats to be res.data. Here we can just do an alert. Go and get cats. And cat provider.
You called the function as gets cats instead of get cats.
Where is that?
Line 4.
Oh, okay. Get cats. Okay. Thank you.
Don't you want to run that in the if auth instead of the if not auth? Or
Yes. Yes, I do. Thank you. If we're not auth, yeah, we're not going to do anything. And like I said, this is a weird way to do this, but I'm going to get the cats once we're auth. And then let's just provide this down to our provider cats. So now we have this cats data. And then, so now that I've added that state, well, I can use it here. Cats, code, JSON, stringify cats. I think that one error we saw was the 401. I think that's because I had As Madeline said, I had it in the wrong if else. So if I threw get cats down here, I'm getting that 401 because I'm not authorized yet. But if I move this up here, this is some really funky code, but it works. So now I have like this cat state that's in my cat's provider. I mean, I almost think we could throw this in the auth provider and just have this, because our auth provider is also like our user data. So, you know, a lot like cats are going to be specific to a logged in user. So I don't think if we really wanted to like get the cats on mount, I think this would, our auth provider would be the place to do it. But because yeah, if I'm doing stuff like this where I'm trying to see like, do I have a user? And if I do, get the cats. Well, that should probably go in this section. So that seems to be related to my user. I think cats are, but a lot of code is just getting it to work. So now here I can. So it's a little bit my home component. This gets the data when this home component mounts. When I refresh my page, and I haven't even gone to the cats page, like that data should already be there. For my home component, I actually have to go there. And then once I go to that page, it calls the use effect on that component. Let's try also doing this. So we have this get cats. Let's see if we can grab this liked cats. Refresh. Let's go to my console. Like cats. So I guess this person has, this is my test at test.com. These are the cats they've liked. So what I could maybe do here is create some state. I want to call this liked cats. I'll just call it liked cats, camel case. That's how we can distinguish between these two. So liked underscore cats, that's the array of IDs. So maybe something I could do here is, you know, maybe I'll do this right here, set cats. So res.data is, you know, all the oh wait, crap. No, this isn't going to work because what I wanted to do was using this array, go get all the like cats, but I forgot our API cats. Remember, this only returns unliked cats. I was thinking maybe we could take this like cats array and go through and mix and match, but that's not going to work. But we do have another call. So we have, if we do want to grab the like cats, we could do another Axios call. Here. Let's get like cats. I'm just going to copy this Axios call. I think this was my underscore cats. That was that route to grab all the like cats. So we'll set that like cats to res.data. And then we can pass this on down. Like cats. So now I have this provider that has the cats. Maybe I should call this like unview cats or unlike cats. We have the like cats array. So then in my cats.js, pull that off. Like cats. Let's stringify that. I'm just going to throw some headers in here so this is a little easier to read. So there's our array of cats. There's our array of like cats. So like this ID 19 should not be in this array. Likewise, like ID 20 should not be. Just 20. Oh, there's a lot of 20s. ID 20 should only be here in this cats array.
That Axios call is only going to call when you change your email, so it'll only call when you log in. So like if you went and changed your like cats, that's not going to display the new cats, right?
Yeah, so let's do like, and like this is more like a brain teaser type deal. This is not something you want to do, but these brain teasers can be good to kind of make us think about this. So yeah, let's say we go to our home, which does a completely different Axios call, and where we can like a cat. Now, in this home component, we're doing our own Axios call. We're maintaining our own state right here. Like this home component has its own cat state that is independent of this cat. And yeah, going back to this cats component, it's not going to reload. It's not going to do an Axios call to grab it. Is that what you were asking, Mike?
Yeah, because the Axios, the use effect call is set up to only run when the email changes. So it'll only change when you're first authorizing, basically. So it'll only do your Axios call when you first get authorized.
Yeah. I mean, it'll also call when it mounts this cat. This will call when it mounts. But remember, since it's at such a high level, app.js, or if I go to my index.js, this cat providers, it's never going to unmount unless I like refresh the page. So yeah. So basically, yeah, what you're saying is right. Like if I go back here, like this is going to be my old state. It's not going to have that liked cat. So I think to make this a little more clear, let me register as a new user who doesn't have any like cats. Okay. So I registered as a new user. Here's their cats. These are the ones that are unliked. They don't have any like cats. In my home component that we did yesterday, this home component has its own cat state. It's not attached to the provider. If I click like, now, you know, there should be one cat it likes, but if I go back to this page, it's not going to be there. If I want to show what it should be there, if I refresh. If I refresh, go down there, there's the cat. So let's do a little, and like I said, this is, you would not want to do this where you would have like this cat state in your component and then have a provider that's actually providing the cat state. This is more just for demo. If I switched it up to that, like what I could do is in this home component, it's like, hey, let's not do the use effect anymore. Because this no longer needs to grab those cats. I'm not going to grab cats from state. I'm going to go ahead and grab the cats from my use context. Cat context. So make a note here, like cats local to component here. Here we're grabbing cats from provider now. Cool. So now we have this, you know, remove cat from UI function. Well, we're still exporting this set cats, or are we? Let's go to my cat provider. I forgot if we export a set cats function. So yeah, I can now take this set cats from my provider, throw this on down. And now my home.js, I can pull this set cats function off of there. And now my remove cat from UI function, it's going to set cats. You know, it's the same functionality is going to work, but it's going to set the cats in my provider state. So now let me refresh just to make sure. Okay, so let's go to our cats. So this has one like cat with ID 17. I go home. Let's go ahead and like this cat. Let's like 2 cats. So I'm gonna like 2 cats. Now I go to my back to my cats component. That's not there. I refresh. There's the 3 cats. That should be there. That state has changed. Yeah, let's start a new user. I just want to check this one more time. User 8, register. Okay. So they have no like cats. I go home. I like one. But that's not updating there. Refresh, it's there. Okay. So I would have expect that to refresh. We go to, so let's kind of debug this. So since this was working before, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could do like a console log filter cats dot length. That should be, you know, I have 20 cats. So after I've removed one, I should have one less. Where could this be coming from? Set cats. So let's just do this. Okay. So I'll clear this. So this person has one like cat. So I go to my home. I click like. That's logging 18. So that's the length of, I'm expecting that to be 18 because I've removed one. So then I'm setting cats to that new filter cats array. Oh, okay. I know what's going on here. I'm stringifying the like cats. And in my cat provider, so once again, I grab the like cats just when I do the use effect. I get like cats when it mounts. So it's still the same issue. When I go back to the cats component, I would imagine it's not in the cats array. It's just probably hard to see. But remember this one, I'm not doing the use effect again. I'm not getting the state. So what I would actually need to do to update that array is I need to pass this set like cats state to it as well, because that's actually the array that's where I'm looking at. So now I need to set like cats, go to my home.js. Crap, I'm gonna probably need, do I get? Yeah, this is why this gets, so another thing I need to do here is my cat provider. I need to send this the like cats as well. Let's just do this here. I think this is going to be messy. I'm going to add a function, you know, add like cat. Because what I want this to do, and this is going to take a cat. Here's my cat, and then spread out over my like cats. We can set the like cats to this. So here's my function. I have this function add like cats. That will just, if I give it a cat, it will create an array, copy my current like cats, and then set that state in my provider. And then I'm just going to throw this function on down. All right. So now my home.js, go ahead and throw that add liked cat, add liked cat. So here we're going to set cat to the filter cats, but I'm also going to need to add a like cat, and I'm going to have to find that cat. So I'm going to just copy my filter method and switch this to a find method. And so I'm going to go through all my cats, find the cat where the cat ID equals the ID that was given to me. So that will find the particular cat that was just liked. And then I can add that cat to that method. All right, so I'm going to log out. I'm going to register. Let's do test 9, username 9, register. So here's the final test. We go home. Let's like Lucy. So now I go to cats. There's Lucy. And yeah, if I search for Lucy, Lucy should also not. Faker can sometimes give us same names. I'm going to search for ID 16. This ID 16 should not be in my cats. So that was working before, but what we forgot to do was update this like cats array too. Because we're actually maintaining 2 separate arrays here. So when I actually click this like, I actually have to update 2 arrays. I have to remove one from one array and I have to add it to another. And now that's working. And yeah, one of the nice things, like I said, with this way of doing it, I really being able just to like come into your provider and see your state. There's my like cats. Here's my like cats and there's my unlike cats. And you can like go in and drill those up, like look at those objects. The names are bad. This is like, it'd be nice if that said what the actual name was, like cats, unlike cats, data, but it's not. Go to my provider. There's the state of my auth provider. I have an email, user ID. So we kind of refactored this home component to grab our data from our cat context. And really this method right here, this should probably go in our provider. So one way we could refactor this is I could take this out. I think this would be a lot cleaner. I'm going to call this like cat liked. That can take an ID. This actually is still going to, I don't think we need to change anything from here. But now I could just probably pass this function down as well. This is just more just to clean up the code a little bit. So I no longer on my upload, I could just I don't even really need this upvote. I could just call it right here, like cat light. Oh crap, I need it there. Damn it. Yeah, I guess I would still need it. It's going to screw up that function, the remove cat from UI. I'll just undo that, but definitely getting a little messy trying to like mix and match this functionality. But yeah, that's this pass button is going to be broken now with what I just did. But that's okay. Questions on this? I think that can like sometimes be fun to just kind of do some random things with code, just kind of stretch your thinking. So kind of like doing reviews because we can just kind of wing it, but yeah, this is as you're going through your homework, do you find yourself just kind of doing this like trial and error type stuff? Seeing if stuff works. It's kind of like banging on stuff. It's how it is at like work, whenever I code stuff. It's not like I know what it's not like I have like a set plan of what I'm doing. It can be like, definitely you can get into like, when you think about like Rails and Rails conventions, there's definitely times where you can get into like some patterns, which are always nice. Like, oh, we're going to do CRUD actions on cars and we're going to follow the same conventions. But UI, like it's part of the reason I really like front end stuff. Front end stuff is so just like all messy and kind of, it's a very creative thing. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I guess we're over time. Let's come back at 2:10. I do have that right, correct? I have switched my computer on my clock. I'm so confused right now. But let's come back at 2:10 and we'll see. Maybe we'll just let you do project time. I mean, I think it's fine to give you an extra hour. And I also think the TAs are going to be doing a review today. So if you want more lecture, you can go to that. So we'll come back at 2:10. Yeah, we can go from there. Sound good? And sorry once again for being late. I'm really sorry. So
It's all good, James.
I feel really dumb. I wish I had like a better excuse than my excuse, but whatever. Well, cool. Have a good one. Have a good lunch.